The coffee mug hit the kitchen floor before I could catch it, and my mother-in-law didn't even flinch. She just stood there in my kitchen, in my house, wearing her silk robe, at 2 in the afternoon, and watched the shards scatter across the tile like she was observing weather. "You broke it," she said flatly. "That was from my son's grandmother." It wasn't. I bought that mug at a farmer's market in Asheville 3 years ago. But I got down on my knees and picked up every piece without saying a word, because that's what I'd been trained to do in the 22 months since my mother-in-law moved into our home. My name is Simone. No, wait. Let me start before that. Let me start with who I was before. My name is Bellamy Crane. I'm 31 years old. I run a freelance brand consulting firm. I built from a Google Doc and a LinkedIn profile after getting laid off during the pandemic. By the time I married my husband, I had 11 retainer clients and a waiting list. I say that not to brag. I say it because what comes next only makes sense if you understand that I was never the woman my mother-in-law decided I was. My husband's name is my husband. That's how I'll say it, because his name stopped mattering the moment he chose silence over me, over and over, for almost 2 years. His mother, I called her by her first name once, early on, and she corrected me so quickly it felt like a slap. She goes by mother. Not her mother, not her mother, everyone's mother. The kind of woman who introduces herself as the boy's mama and means it as a threat. We got married in a small ceremony in the Blue Ridge Mountains. 30 people. My dress cost $400 off a sample rack, and I felt more beautiful than I ever have in my life. She wore black. When I mentioned it to my husband, he said she just loved the dress and I was reading into it. I should have known then. I didn't. The arrangement started 8 months into our marriage. His father had passed the previous winter, and she couldn't manage the house in Ohio alone. That's what my husband said. Just for a few months. Just until she gets settled, he said it. The way people say things they know aren't true, but hope they can make true through repetition. She arrived on a Tuesday with 7 suitcases and a framed photo of my husband at age 9 that she hung in our living room without asking. By week 3, she had rearranged my kitchen. I came downstairs one morning, and the cabinet where I kept my coffee supplies had been moved to make room for her protein shakes. My French press was on the top shelf, pushed behind a casserole dish I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she smiled and said she'd optimized the flow. When I told my husband, he said at least she's trying to contribute. That was the pattern. Every complaint I made was reframed as her trying. Every boundary I set was a boundary I was too rigid about. Every time I felt erased in my own home, I was told I was being dramatic. What she didn't know, what neither of them seemed to register, was that the laptop stuff I was doing at the kitchen table every morning. Before she woke up, the calls I took in my car because she'd started joining me in my home office without knocking, the spreadsheets I closed the second she walked into the room because I didn't want her questions. That was my business, my actual revenue-generating, client-retaining business. I closed a 6-month contract with a regional healthcare company from the passenger seat of my car parked in a Whole Foods lot because she'd invited her friends over for lunch without telling me, and I couldn't hear my own thoughts inside the house. I didn't tell my husband that part. I had stopped telling him things by then. The morning everything collapsed started like most of them did. I was at the dining table at 7 a.m., coffee on my left, laptop open, a deck I'd been building for 3 weeks pulled up on screen. I had a presentation call at 9 with the creative director of a company I'd been trying to land for 8 months. It was the kind of call that could change the trajectory of a year. She came downstairs at 7:45. I didn't look up. I'd learned to be small and invisible in the mornings. It usually bought me an extra hour. "You're at the table again," she said, not a question. "I'm working," I said. I kept my eyes on the screen. She opened the refrigerator. I heard her move things around. Then she was beside me, and I could smell her perfume, and I focused harder on the slide in front of me. "When's the last time you cooked a real breakfast?" she asked. "For my son?" He makes his own breakfast, I said. He's 34. She made a sound. The sound she made when she found something I said, both amusing and pathetic. A wife keeps a home, she said. That's not an opinion. That's just what it is. I run a business from this home, I said. My voice was still even. I was proud of that. That's what I do. She was quiet for a moment. I thought maybe it was over. Then her hand came down on my laptop and she turned it toward her. What business? She said. What is this? Emails? I reached for it. Please don't touch my computer. All you do is sit here and type. Her voice was louder now. My son works himself half to death, and you sit here typing. You can't even keep a clean house. You can't have people over because the state of this kitchen. Please stop touching my laptop. He deserves a wife who... I said, don't touch it. She picked it up. I don't know what came over me in that moment. I've thought about it 100 times since. It wasn't rage, exactly. It was something older than rage. Something that had been waiting patiently. Under 22 months of bitten tongues and swallowed words. And mornings spent invisible in my own home. I stood up and I took it back. I took it back with both hands, and she pulled. And for 3 seconds, we were 2 grown women in a dining room. At 7:48 in the morning, fighting over a piece of hardware. And then she let go suddenly. And the edge of it caught the corner of the table, and I heard a crack that made my stomach drop. I looked at the screen. A hairline fracture across the bottom left corner. Thin as a thread, but there. My presentation deck. My 9 o'clock call. 8 months of trying to land this client. She stepped back and smoothed her robe and said, very calmly, "You see what you did?" Something in my chest went very, very still. "Get out," I said. She blinked. "Get out of this room," I said. "Right now. This is my son's. This is my house." My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by that. "I bought this house. My name is on the deed. And I am telling you to get out of this room before I say something neither of us can come back from." She didn't move. My husband appeared in the doorway in his work clothes, tie half knotted, clearly having heard the last 30 seconds of that. "Hey," he said, softly, like he was talking to 2 children fighting over a toy. "Hey, let's all just..." She cracked my laptop, I said. "I have a presentation in 1 hour." He looked at the laptop, then at his mother, then at me. "I'm sure it still works," he said. That was the moment, not the laptop. That sentence. "I'm sure it still works." I picked up the laptop and walked past both of them into my office, and I closed the door. The call at 9 went fine. The crack didn't spread. The creative director said they'd be in touch. I sat at my desk for 10 minutes after and didn't move. Then I opened my client management dashboard, looked at my numbers, looked at the contract pipeline, looked at the retainer renewals, scheduled for the next 90 days. I thought about the mug from the farmer's market in Asheville. I thought about the cabinet she rearranged. I thought about the photo of my husband at age 9, hanging in my living room. I opened my email, and I sent 3 messages. 1 to my accountant, 1 to my attorney, 1 to my business banker. Subject lines: "Can we talk today? Urgent question, property. Review this, please." I didn't know yet what I was going to do. I just knew I was done doing nothing. My husband knocked on the office door at noon. "She feels terrible," he said. He said it from the hallway. Didn't open the door, just spoke to the wood. "Okay," I said. "She wants to apologize. She can slide it under the door." Silence. "Bellamy. I have calls this afternoon," I said. "I'll be out for dinner." He went away. The apology didn't come. What came instead, around 3 o'clock, was the sound of her on the phone in the kitchen telling someone, her sister, I assumed, that I was unstable, that I screamed at her, that she didn't know how much longer she could stay in a house where she felt unwelcome. I sat in my office and listened, and I thought, good. My attorney called at 4. "The deed is clean," she said. "You're the sole owner. His name isn't on it." "I know," I said. "I just needed to hear you say it." "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking about my options," I said. "Well," a pause. "You have them." My accountant called at 4:45. Your business income for the last 2 years, she said. You want the real number? Yes. She gave it to me. I already knew it. But I wrote it down on a piece of paper and left the paper on my desk where I could see it. My husband's income, which he'd reminded me of many times in the last 2 years. Never directly, always sideways, always in the form of his mother's comments about my little projects, was less than half that number. I kept the paper on my desk. He came to find me again at 6. This time he opened the door. Can we talk? He said. Sure, I said. I didn't close my laptop. He sat down across from me, in the chair. Clients sat in when I had clients in the office, which I hadn't had in person since she moved in, because I didn't feel comfortable bringing people into a house where I never knew what she'd say. I think, he started, that you owe her an apology. I looked at him. She's been trying, he said. I know she's not perfect, but she's been going through a hard time and she's trying to connect with you, and I think today things got out of hand, and both of you. She grabbed my laptop during a workday, I said. She cracked the screen. She didn't mean to crack it. She grabbed it. Because she was trying to show interest in my work that she has spent 22 months calling a hobby. He was quiet. She told me last week that you didn't need to work, I said. That I should let you take care of things. She said that. To my hitches. She's from a different generation. She's 63, I said. She's not from the 40s. He rubbed his forehead. He did that when he didn't have an answer but wasn't ready to admit it. I just think, he said. That's some grace. I've been gracious for 22 months, I said. I'm done being gracious. He looked at the paper on my desk, the one with the number. He didn't know what it was. He looked at it the way people look at things they sense are important, but can't quite read. What does that mean? He said. It means I'm going to need some time to think, I said. Tonight, I need you to sleep in the guest room. He stared at me. Bellamy, I'm not angry, I said. And I wasn't. Not exactly. I'm just done pretending everything is fine when it isn't, and I need one night to think, without having to manage anyone else's feelings. He left. He didn't go to the guest room. I heard him and his mother talking in the kitchen for 2 hours. I ordered Thai food and ate it at my desk and watched a show on my laptop through the cracked corner of the screen and felt, for the first time in almost 2 years, completely calm. My attorney and I spoke the next morning. Here's what you have, she said. The house is yours outright. She's a guest with no legal standing. He has no claim to the property. The business is registered solely in your name. If you wanted to ask her to leave, you could do it today. Legally, cleanly, without his involvement. What about him? I asked. That's a longer conversation, she said. But from an asset perspective, you're well protected. I sat with that for a minute. What if I gave her a formal notice? I said. Written, delivered properly. You could, my attorney said. You could. Also just tell her to leave. I want it on paper, I said. I want her to understand this isn't a fight. This is a decision. We drafted the letter that afternoon. It was polite. It was clear. It gave her 2 weeks to make arrangements. It cited the original agreement. Temporary, 3 months. That had now stretched to 22. It was signed by me and copied to my attorney. I printed it on good paper. I didn't tell my husband. I put it in an envelope and I set it on the kitchen counter the next morning, before either of them woke up, next to her protein shakes, with her name on the front. I was on a client call when I heard her read it. The sound she made wasn't a scream. It was more like a sharp inhale, the kind that comes before a scream, and then footsteps fast toward my office. She didn't knock. What is this? She said. She was holding the envelope. Her face had gone a color I hadn't seen before. It's a notice, I said. I held up one finger, the international signal for one moment, and finished my sentence to my client. I'll send that over this afternoon. Thank you. I ended the call. You're kicking me out, she said. You're actually. I'm asking you to honor the original arrangement, I said. 3 months. We're at 22, my son. My husband doesn't own this house, I said. I do. She looked at me like I'd said something in a language she didn't speak. You can't. I can, I said, and I am. You have 2 weeks. My attorney's information is at the bottom of the letter if you have questions. She left the office. She left it so fast the door bounced off the wall. What came next was my husband. He came home from work at 5:30, and I heard them in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent, his voice going through phases. Confusion, then disbelief, then something harder. He came to find me in the living room, where I was reading. You hired an attorney? He said. I spoke to my attorney, I said. Yes. Over a fight about a laptop? I set the book down. This isn't about the laptop. Then what is it about? It's about 22 months of being told I don't work, that I don't contribute, that I should be cooking and cleaning instead of running the business that pays for this house. I held his gaze. It's about you, never once saying that wasn't true. He sat down. I watched him sit down, and I watched him try to find a rebuttal, and I watched him not find one. She's going through a hard time. He finally said, So am I said. I've been going through a hard time for almost 2 years, and you kept telling me to give her grace. So this is punishment. This is a decision, I said. She can stay with her sister in Portland. She has friends in Scottsdale. She's not without options. She's been without boundaries, which is different. He was quiet for a long moment. And what about us? He said. I looked at him. At the man I'd married in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the one who'd held my hand at our small ceremony and cried a little during the vows, and promised me things I'd believed. I think, I said carefully, that we have a bigger problem than where your mother lives. He didn't sleep in the guest room that night. He slept in our room, on his side, as far toward the edge as he could get without falling off. I lay on my side and stared at the ceiling and felt the space between us, like a third person in the bed. 3 days later, his mother called her sister in Portland. A week later, she told me she'd made arrangements. She said it to my face, in the kitchen, in a tone that was supposed to make me feel guilty, a resource being publicly acknowledged. I said I was glad she'd found something that worked. She stared at me for a long moment, searching for the version of me she'd learned to manage. The quiet one, the accommodating one, the one who picked up broken mug pieces from the kitchen floor without saying anything. She didn't find her. She left on a Thursday. My husband helped carry her suitcases to the car. 7 of them, same as she'd arrived with. I watched from the window. When he came back inside, he stood in the kitchen for a moment and then said, without looking at me, I hope you're happy. I'm getting there, I said. He moved into the guest room that night on his own. I didn't ask him to. We had the real conversation 2 weeks later, the one about us, not about her. It lasted 3 hours, and it was quiet and honest in a way that our marriage, I realized, had never quite managed to be. He told me he'd felt stuck. I told him I'd felt invisible. He told me he hadn't understood the scope of my work. Not really. And then he stopped himself, because we both heard it. I hadn't understood. Past tense. As if understanding had arrived too late to change anything. Do you want to try? He asked. I thought about it. I really did. I want to, I said. But I think we built something on a foundation that was cracked before we noticed. And I've been spackling over it for 2 years. He cried a little. I didn't, which surprised me. We worked with a mediator. We were fair to each other. He had no claim to the house, so there was no fight about that. The business was mine. The savings we'd accumulated together were divided down the middle, which felt right. He kept the car. I kept the French press, a resource being publicly acknowledged. The morning after the paperwork was final, I woke up at 6:30, went downstairs, made coffee in my kitchen, sat at my dining room table with my laptop open, and started on a deck for a new client. A woman who'd found me through a referral from the healthcare company I'd landed on, that cracked screen. No one came downstairs in a silk robe. No one moved my things. No one told me my things. No one told me what a wife was supposed to be. The kitchen smelled like coffee and like mine. And outside the window, the light was doing that thing it does in early fall. When the angle shifts and everything looks like it's been lit from the inside. I opened the deck. I started writing. I'd spent 2 years becoming invisible in a house I owned. It turned out the door back to myself had been unlocked the whole time. I just had to be willing to open it.